Don't overdo it! Yeah, not bad! That beat! So
How are you guys doing today? It is I, the True Game Nerd, the host of True Game Nerd TV, and I am here to look at the Dead or Alive series. So as we know in the past, I grew up playing Tekken. I have all of them, I reviewed all of them. But there was the ugly red-headed stepchild that I enjoyed playing, but a lot of people were embarrassed to play, and this was Dead or Alive. Why? Well, yeah. So, is the game good or is it just a gimmick? That's always been a question. Well, I'm here to break down Dead or Alive 1, Dead or Alive 2, Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate, Dead or Alive 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to kind of solve this mystery of is the game bad or not? I say it's good because it's fun, but it's also ridiculous and not meant to be taken that seriously. So we're going to start with the first game, which really, to be honest, has not aged the best, Dead or Alive 1. Dead or Alive was a game that was created back in 1996 for arcades. It was kind of a response for Virtua Fighter. And the guy that got the series going was Tomonobu Itagaki, who was really trying to save Team Ninja because they were in financial strain at this point. So he came up with the concept. What if we took Virtua Fighter and spiced it up? In other words, like, what if you took a hamburger but added some chili peppers and made it a little more interesting? Well, that's exactly what he did. So, first thing he did, the game would feature scantily clad, beautiful women. Kind of like a rock and roll show, right? Like the dancers on the side. And then the next thing he would change is instead of there being a ring out, the ring would explode. And what do you know, it did really well. Graphically, it was probably one of the better looking games of its time. And from the standpoint of just being a fun kind of beat 'em up style fighting game, it was much easier to pick up and play than games like Tekken or Virtua Fighter. So it did really, really well. That being said, it led to an entire franchise that would go on and on and on and on until we end up where we are now with DLC that costs an arm and a leg. That being said, let's go ahead and start with the graphics. Graphically, the game does look amazing for its time. Does it look good now? Well, no, but that wouldn't be a fair thing to assess. Everything is fairly reasonably textured. The character models do have a lot more focus than the backgrounds. I noticed that in Dead or Alive, the backgrounds are essentially just stock paintings with a floor texture. And of course, as you get into the ring out and you get hit with things and electricity and fire, it gets a little more interesting. But the reality is, what looked good back in the day doesn't necessarily look that great now. So if you're looking to be blown away, you need to look at it through the lens of like 1996. So aside from the character models, I wasn't really that impressed with the graphics. Mostly because there were some games out there that were graphically impressive. Granted, like Crash Bandicoot, even though it's not a fighting game, the games that looked amazing usually had to kind of manipulate the hardware. You can't really do that in a fighting game. So with a grain of salt, I would say that the graphics were alright, not great. Character models look really good. And, you know, the animations look pretty nice and stellar and clean. It's just the backgrounds kill it, because the backgrounds just don't look very good. But don't let that discourage you from actually playing the game. It's still a piece of history and still considered one of the better looking games of 1996. Now let's go ahead and move on and talk about the sound. Now the sound of the Dead or Alive series has never been its strong point for me. The music is great, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying more like, it seems like it's missing things. Dead or Alive 1 and 2 don't seem to have any voice grunts for when players are being attacked. Or 3, quite frankly. Dead or Alive 1, 2, and 3 don't seem to have any voice grunts for when the character is being attacked, but they do grunt when they're attacking. That's a weird pet peeve, I know, but it bugged me because other fighting games did not have this problem. And I'm not sure why that is. I guess at the time they just didn't feel it was necessary to put emphasis on that. Now the good thing is the music is, while it isn't phenomenal, like it's not an orchestra amazing rendition like you would see in like Tekken 2, it is good, energetic fighting game music. And it will take you all the way back to the 90s with its ridiculous synth drums and all that stuff. So from a sound point, just like the graphics, is it amazing? No. Does it get the job done? Yes. Moving on to the gameplay. Now the gameplay is interesting for me because the first Dead or Alive I played was actually Dead or Alive 2. And so it's weird to go back to this one because a lot of the combos seem to be missing, or some of the control layouts are different. But it doesn't mean that it plays badly. As a fighter, it plays very smoothly and actually runs a heck of a lot faster than a lot of fighting games at the time. Controls don't feel very floaty. The only negative I could say is there's a bit of a learning curve because the moveset is so much more limited than someone who has played the later Dead or Alive games. But, again, it's a good piece of history. Now, you do have some different modes. You have your story mode, arcade mode, whatever you want to call it, right? Where you just go all the way through and you try to beat the game. Now, as far as I could see, I didn't really see a lot of character endings, what's saddened me, but it's not a deal breaker for me. Just something that annoyed me a little bit. You have your versus mode, right? One-on-one, ha ha ha. You know, you have a training mode that will help you kind of learn the moves and get things done. And then you have, you're going to have to forgive me for mispronouncing this, Komite mode. Komite? Komite. I don't know. A mode where you basically just fight endless battles and the goal is to try and get more points. It's kind of like survival. In fact, it is survival. But when you lose, it will keep going. So, I don't know. I don't know why they needed that mode. To me, I'd rather play the story mode. And it seems like the AI jumps a lot. Now, from a gameplay standpoint, there is a decent amount of variety, at least for a fighting game. As I said earlier, the controls control relatively well. They're not that janky or floaty like a lot of early fighting games. My only major complaint, again, is there's a stiff learning curve. You can't, run all over your opponents with Kasumi because she's missing like half of her combos. So you have to be ready for all of these things that are missing. But from a gameplay standpoint, much like the sound and the graphics, any of it phenomenal? No. Maybe for its time, graphically, it was phenomenal. But it all gets the job done. So all in all, what do you have here? A very solid 1996 fighting game. Nothing more, nothing less, with some little perverty Easter eggs thrown in. So this leaves me in a weird conundrum with how I should rate Dead or Alive. Because I don't want to be overly harsh and get the wrath of the internet on me over this. But I wasn't that blown away either, because like even Tekken 1... and games like Tekken 1 seem to have a little more substance to them. And so I think the best thing I can do is rate this game about a 7 out of 10. For what it does, it gets the job done perfectly. It's as simple as that. It's not going to be the most amazing fighting game you've ever played. It's going to be nostalgic, it's going to be fun, and it's going to be your typical fighting game experience. So yes. Well, that being said, we are going to also be looking at some other games. Dead or Alive 2 is coming up, and I'll also include Dead or Alive Ultimate in that same week. So I'll be doing more, so stay tuned as I review the other Dead or Alive games. Thank you again for watching this video. If you liked it, fantastic. Go ahead and click that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Go ahead and like it. If you didn't like it, that's okay too. I hope that you don't throw things at me. But, yes, there will be more to come. I am back, especially amid this coronavirus thing. I got nothing else to do anyway. All right, True Game Nerd out.